Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Stone. Today we are going to be learning about the 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. Now the special right triangles with 30, 60, 90 are a little more complicated, but I like to view it in one way and one way only. So I like to view it as we have a hypotenuse over here. There is a short side which is always going to be across from the 30. So I label that the short side. There's this long side over here, and then there's the hypotenuse. Well, in order to get that, if you find the short side, you want to find the short side first. That's like the center of everything, is that short side. The hypotenuse is going to be 2 times the short side. And this longer part is going to be the short side times the square root of 3. So it's similar to a 45, 45 in that nature, but it's not going to be square root of 2. It's going to be square root of 3. The longer side is going to be from the 60 degrees, if you were given the 60 degrees. But it's normally going to be visually longer. It's going to be across from the 60. All right? So some other things to take note to is that if you're not given the short side, you're going to be sad because it's a lot easier when you're given the short side of these triangles. So if you're not given the short side, you want to find the short side. If you're given the longer side, this side right here, then you would have to divide by the square root of 3 to get the short side. If you were given the hypotenuse, this side right here, obviously, you would just have to divide by 2 to get the short side, because the hypotenuse is twice as much as the short side, so you would just divide it in half. Okay? We're going to do some examples, and we're going to see how this looks out. So our first one, I am going to give you the 30 degrees here, and I am going to give you that this part right there is 5. So we have the short side. The 5 is the short side, which is great, because if we have the short side, everything else is going to be easier. The hypotenuse is going to be 2 times the short side, so we got 5 times 2, which is 10. And the longer side right here is going to be the short side times the square root of 3, which is just 5 square root of 3. 5 times the square root of 3 is 5 square root of 3. And that's it. You're done. Don't have to do anything else. That's when you're given the short side. When you're given the short side, everything is easy. Okay? So, what if you're not given the short side? What if we were given the 32 here as the hypotenuse and the 30 degrees is still here? Well, this time we're given the hypotenuse, which is annoying because we don't have the short side, but we can find it really easy. Hypotenuse divided by 2 is the short side. So 32 divided by 2 is the short side. That's 16. Beautiful. Now we just have to take 16 and multiply by the square root of 3 to get this longer side right here, which is 16 square root of 3. And we're done. That's it. What if, instead of getting the short side, you're given the long side, though? That is where things sometimes get sticky. Okay? So instead of being given the short side or the hypotenuse, what if you're given the long side, which is across from the 60 degrees? And what if I told you it was 9 square root of 3? Which is actually a nice thing that it has the square root of 3 already there. So if it was 9 square root of 3, you could take this, and the short side is the long side divided by the square root of 3. So if we took 9 square root of 3 and divided by the square root of 3, those would cancel and just leave you with 9, which makes a ton of sense, because when it was 16, it was 16 square root of 3. When it's 9, it would be 9 square root of 3. So we just pretty much deducted or removed that square root of 3 to move it to the short side. The hypotenuse is still going to be double the short side, so we would double the 9 to get 18. All right? Moving on. Let's say we were given the long side again, So 30 here, and it's 20. Now things are going to be a little more ugly because we have to divide the long side. The long side divided by the square root of 3 is equal to the short side. Okay, what happens if I take 20 and I divide by the square root of 3? Well, that's going to equal an ugly number because we can't keep the square root on the bottom. It's not considered okay. So in order to do that, we need to multiply by the square root of 3 and the square root of 3, which would give us 20 square root of 3 over the square root of 9, which is really just 20 square root of 3 over 3. So 20 square root of 3 over 3. If 20 happened to divide by 3, I would do that, but 20 does not divide by 3. So that's why I'm leaving it as 20 square root of 3 over 3. From here, I still want to find the hypotenuse out. All I have to do is double it. 2 times the short side is equal to the hypotenuse. Okay, so from up here, 2 times the short, that was what was equal to the hypotenuse. So if I double this, all I end up with was multiplying by 2. I'm going to multiply the top of the fraction by 2 because I'm multiplying by technically like 2 over 1. And that gives me 40. I only multiply that number in front, not the square root, not the bottom. I get 40 square root of 3 over 3. Which again, if 40 divided by 3, I would have to divide. It doesn't, so I won't. Let's try another one. Let's say that we have here a 15 square root of 3, and that is across from the 60. So again, we have the long side. Again, when we have the long side, it's the hardest one. That's why I'm doing these the most. So we have to take that 15 square root of 3 and divide by the square root of 3 to get the short side. Well, if I divide 15 square root of 3 and divide by the square root of 3, it cancels. I just get 15. If I have the short side, I can double it to get the hypotenuse. Done. Don't overthink them. One more problem. Let's say that we are given the hypotenuse, and it's an odd number, like 9. So if we're given the hypotenuse, this is going to be 60. We have to take the 9 and divide by 2 to get the short side. We're going to keep it as a fraction, 9 over 2. In order to get to the long side, we're going to have to take the short side and multiply by the square root of 3. So I take the short side and multiply by the square root of 3, which is 9 over 2 square root of 3. You could also write it as 9 square root of 3 over 2. This is how I see it more often, but both are correct. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, stay positive, and I will see everybody later. Bye.